classification status, I think many Americans have a misconception. They think that if something's classified, then whoever knows about that program or about that information, their job is to try to kind of keep it quiet. Of course, they don't volunteer the information. They don't bring it up in conversation. But, folks, it goes farther than that. If you ask a very direct and pointed question to someone who holds classified information, it is not just enough for them to claim ignorance, to act like they don't understand what you're talking about. If you're the more directed and the more pointed your information is, that indicates that you might have some awareness, it is incumbent upon that individual to directly misinform, disinform, to try to directly change your perception of that information to throw you off track, so to speak. They're compelled to do such as a result of compartmentalization of information. Folks, I'm mentioning these things because as we continue in the National Aeronautic and Space Administration Act, we come across a few of the other significant pieces that let us know just exactly where we actually stand, the information that we've received. To give you an example of that, I'm citing now from Section 206, Reports to Congress. Once again, this starts out in very benign fashion. The administration shall submit to the President for transmittal to the Congress, semi-annually and at other such times as it deems desirable, a report of its activities and accomplishments. That was Section A. It continues in Section B, subsection 1 and 2, continues in Section C. But, you know, folks, the punchline isn't read until you get to Section D, where it lays down the ultimate, the bottom line. No information which has been classified for reasons of national security shall be included in any report made under this section, unless such information has been declassified by or pursuant to authorization given by the President. But, folks, you will note that in the text of subsection D, even the President does not need to be informed if it is deemed as reasons of national security. That's right, you heard correctly. Folks, the President does not sit at the top of the totem pole in terms of access to sensitive information. The President of the United States sits about halfway down the totem pole. There are quite a few members of the military, of the intelligence community, and of black alphabet organizations that have much, much higher ranking clearance and access to sensitive information than does the President of the United States. And once again, from the Act itself, right from its inception, we're told, national security is paramount. No other clauses, no other promises, no other offers have significance compared to national security. Your humble host could continue reading from this Act. Perhaps in a future program I will. But we need to turn our attention now to some of the disclosures that NASA has been making over the course of the last 10 weeks. Much like those of us who have investigated 9/11 and the truth about the events of 9/11, much that in similar fashion to how we know that our government, our intelligence community, had plenty of reason to be aware of what was coming on that day, and yet chose not to act on it. Folks, NASA has been operating in much the same way with some very significant things heading our direction, not the least of which is Comet Elenin, but also discoveries and new understanding about ET or extraterrestrial life. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments when we come back from this break. Please join us again after the break. And ladies and gentlemen, you are back and listening to the Crimson Pill radio program on Republic Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Antonin Fiore. Folks, we have 8 hours of content to cover in the next 10 minutes before I introduce our guest for this inaugural program of the show here on RBN. And so your host is going to try to condense the 8 hours into the 10 minutes by starting with an article posted May 18th of 2011, so just a number of weeks back, on nasa.gov, www.nasa.gov. The title of the article is Free Floating Planets May Be More Common Than Stars. Once again, if you want to look this up for yourself, nasa.gov, dated May 18th, Free Floating Planets May Be More Common Than Stars. Now, ladies and gentlemen, those of us who went through the public school system, we're told a number of things about our solar system, about our planet, about our sun, about our neighboring planets, about our moon, about our cosmos, that are absolutely incorrect. And your government, your military in particular, has known the truth about so many of these things since since before many of you were born. And only in the course of national security, how often do we hear it used and abused in this country today? In the interest of what they deem national security, they've kept these things compartmentalized, concealed, and classified. They've kept them secret from your eyes. I'm reading from this article because this is the most current and relevant example that could impact us enormously and tremendously here, and yet they're only letting it slip out and leak out in these meta-disclosures. I'm reading from the article that the free-floating planets have been predicted. It's based upon research that was conducted, get this, between 2006 and 2007. So the research was conducted, these results have been known for these several years intervening now, and yet only in the spring of this year have they begun to make these disclosures more public. Why? Well, folks, NASA has to hurry their agenda up now, full court press, because of what's coming our direction. And our guest will join us and talk more about possible implications thereof in just a few minutes. I'm reading directly from the article. The discovery indicates there are many more free-floating Jupiter mass planets that can't be seen. The team estimates there are about twice as many of these types of planets, Jupiter size or mass planets that cannot be seen. The team estimates there are about twice as many of them as there are stars. Let you contemplate that one for just a moment before I hit you with the next sentence. In addition, these worlds are thought to be at least as common as planets that orbit stars. So think how many planets orbit our own sun, our star in our solar system, and realize that NASA is telling you that there are twice as many of these worlds, or that they are at least as common, as planets that orbit stars. Folks, this would add up to hundreds of billions, with a B, of lone planets in our Milky Way galaxy alone. Now, let me re-explain the context of this. They're talking about planets that are free-floating through space. They are not orbiting a star. They don't have a relationship like we have with our sun, where we're in orbit. They free-float through the recesses of space. The discovery is based on a joint Japan-New Zealand survey that scanned the center of the Milky Way galaxy during 2006 and 2007. In that minor scan revealing evidence of up to 10 free-floating planets, roughly the mass of Jupiter. The newfound planets are located at an average approximate distance of 10 to 20,000 light years from Earth. But what's the problem, ladies and gentlemen? They're telling us themselves that we cannot see any of these objects that would be of Jupiter mass or smaller. Now, the reason for this, because the way that our instrumentation is built, our technology, we need to be able to see heat and or light. And these free-floating planets might very well be delivering or emanating neither of those. Some of these might very well be brown dwarf stars. Now, as soon as I've said that, I'm sure that some members of our listening audience are thinking about Nibiru, and I won't stop you from thinking that way. But I would ask you to tune in as I continue reading from the article. The study that this is based upon, led by Takahiro Sumi from Osaka University in Japan, appears in the May 19 issue of the journal Nature, just in case you'd like to pursue that thread of research as well. The survey is not sensitive to planets smaller than Jupiter and Saturn. Ladies and gentlemen, that's most of the planets in our solar system are smaller than Jupiter and Saturn. And so it means that they were not able to see them. But theories suggest lower mass planets like Earth should be ejected from their stars more often. As a result, they're thought to be more common than free-floating Jupiters. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, Antonin Fiore, what's the big deal? If these things are free-floating through space, they're not orbiting a sun, then what that means is that they can't sustain life. They shouldn't be an issue. Well, folks, the first problem is that if one of these, of that mass, comes rolling through our solar system, it would be enormously disruptive to all of the planets, to all of their orbits. And folks, if it passed anywhere near Earth's orbit, let alone close to the sun, that would basically blow out the candle in terms of what we think of as enjoying life here on the surface of the Earth. But let me continue reading from the article. Previous observations spotted a handful of free-floating, planet-like objects within star-forming clusters, with masses 3 times that of Jupiter. But scientists suspect the gaseous bodies form more like stars than planets. These small, dim orbs called brown dwarf stars grow from collapsing balls of gas and dust but lack the mass to ignite their nuclear fuel and shine with starlight. It is thought that the smallest brown dwarfs are approximately the size of